Today on the Daniel Baldwin Show, viewer mail and Jeffrey Epstein. Is it time to marinate it? Coming at you right now. Hey everybody, welcome to the Daniel Baldwin Show, and let's get right to it. Viewer mail is from John Gaynor of Boise, Idaho, and he says, "Hello Daniel, my wife and I love your show. We watch every episode." Well, thank you, John, and thank you to your wife, Mrs. Gaynor. Do you think it's safe to send our children to public school? Whoa. Wow, you have no idea how timely that is. You know, wife and I have a 2.5-year-old son. But we have had a lot of talks, and we're in agreement, or we work through, every detail and try to cultivate everything and come to conclusions based on facts and not. Now, my father was a 30-year teacher in a school district in Massapequa, New York, where I also went to school, myself and all my siblings, at the other high school in that town, which was Massapequa as a whole was, really, really good schools, rated like a 10 out of 10. Safe, they have their problems like everybody else that's on stuff that, he shouldn't be. He's doing things he shouldn't. Minimal crime. It's not the most diverse school system. It's very white. Some of that has changed a little bit. Wow, I'm sorry because I preview just to get the one that plan ahead of time I wanted to. So what is your determination for the Gaynor family? I think that's a big factor. And it's not safe like you might be in some place because of gang activity. The proximity of the school is in a challenging area. So there might be, that's one safe. We didn't face. There's material and the way they teach it, actually very unsafe. People believe that, you should take the Bible, Christianity, or whatever your religion in general out of the schools. So therefore there's no more praying. We prayed every day, not in high school. We prayed all through, and we said the national anthem and pledged our allegiance. They've taken all that out, private school, so that's out. And again, why should somebody who doesn't believe, or why should somebody who's from another country, I listen to all the reasons, and I say to myself, I know, but you came here. You weren't sentenced here. Back in the day, the British used. So why are these people, why are they here? Well, I'll tell you, look through Minnesota and everything happening there, and look at the number of, and the subject, and God bless those, but it's like 85% of the Somali population that is on benefits. They're collecting, unemployment, they're collecting social rent reductions, and, as many things as they can get there. Which, listen, when you're starting, if you've come over from a war-torn country and, your husband he's been injured badly and you want a chance at the American dream, blah, blah, blah. But when you've been here 6 years and you still don't have a job, it's a lot easier to be. And then you've got a daycare center that's making millions of dollars. The proof of it just goes on and on. My fear is that when you put a kid in a room with 26 others, and teachers, and then in some ways the whole school system, all the people that interact with you, you're now taking all their beliefs, all their practice, and all the stuff that influence your child. When your kid is 5 years old, you take them to kindergarten, 6, they're in first. They're now away from you by the time they get on the bus, and if you're where I just came from, more rural setting, they were on the bus for over an hour each. So there's that, and then 8 hours of school. So they were gone out of my sight for about 10 hours. That means that school and the whole school thing, because they're sleeping when they come home, I had dinner ready for them. We spent some time interacting. Hopefully there was some schoolwork involved, and they were off and woke up, 2 girls, both. But they kind of did their own thing. I taught them to be able to be independent young women. And again, I'm not taking a 2-year-old and bathing them anymore, are young women by this time. But even when they were in grade school, I taught them, get up, lay out your clothes ahead of time, be ready, blah, 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 blah. And then I took over the stuff that had to be done at home as a single parent. Those influencers, those people that they're with, and all their beliefs can be very challenging when why Susie's dad said, or why, they seem to drink so African American, and so you realize that, so the school that you pick, safe, and the answer to that is, in my opinion, I would ask you to be highly selective, to know the school a little bit, to meet the teacher, to understand, I, no longer think to the state, unless I went out to the island. If I went back to Massapequa, that would be a possibility, that I would send him to Massapequa. All in all, to be around people that are like-minded to my Christianity. I certainly wouldn't go to the city, gone back on. So, for the gainers who wrote this great question, I almost wish, if there's an email, which I believe there is, let me email you guys and I'll do an episode. The answer to your question is no. All in all, I think homeschooling has boomed. I think homeschooling is, when you look at places like Finland and Norway and Sweden, and they will all tell you that there's no reason to put them in a school where you're trying to get them to conform to a certain controlled environment. Boys aren't made to sit around in those school systems, they don't even send them solid 7, getting it to 8, because there's no rush. You need to let boys be boys and learn through action. We have a friend of ours, and she can sit and read. And Bat was running around chasing bugs. Yeah, it wasn't important to him. He'll notice her later. He's a Baldwin male. I notice all that. So I want to go back to a thought, and you can no longer. And we saluted, some of us, a morning thing, and we prayed Holy Mary or whatever. And they don't do that anymore. But we'll read over and over and over and over and over again about a confrontation in Kansas. Some born man now identifies as a woman, transgender person, in the school and is scheduled to read some risque book, risque in my opinion. Like I said about, Finland and Sweden, and these kids, they certainly don't need to think about any of this stuff. They're in their teen years at earliest. And even then, to have the school trying to influence them by reading material from, be seen by the kids as exciting and interesting, it confuses them. There's the great thing where they put $10,000 down, and every time, and even before you make them selection, you put them back down and you say, listen, with this money, you can buy 10,000 cookies. It tells you they're not mature enough. These decisions on their own, and boards of education and governors and senators and departments of education are going to make these decisions based on a lot more the lifestyle in California and some more blue left areas of. I don't feel. I'm pretty sure at 65 years old, I'm going to home teach my son. Please don't write me that I denounce public education. Well, there's examples of real. For me, all in all, I'm not really sure by the time my son, 10 years from now, when he's in 5th grade, at the current rate of where we're going, what's that going to look like? That's a shit show that I see, on average. People that don't like their job, people that could allow it to deteriorate. And believe me, they allow it. And if they refuse to do it and they refuse to support it, they're having a rough time finding teachers. Gainer family, I would have to say, all in all, my vote is that it's not safe, not the things that I consider. It's not safe to send your child to like I said, there's exceptions to that, but you should really do your homework before you send your kid so you know exactly what you're expecting. I want to read this to you, kind of laugh because I'm reading the depth. So marinate, third person present, past tense, marinated or other food in a marinade. The beef was marinated in red wine vinegar. A food undergoes soaking or in a marinade, leave the meat in a cool place to marinate overnight. Important that you actually think about what I'm saying right now. Marinating involves soaking food in a seasoned acidic or enzymatic liquid to improve flavor, tenderize, and add moisture. It works by breaking down muscle fibers, allowing salt to penetrate, and coating the exterior for better searing. Common uses include tenderizing meats, flavoring vegetables, and preventing surface drying. The key reasons for marinating include flavor enhancement and tenderizing tougher cuts. Your favorite steak, and you pour in the liquid seasoning and turn it over. It's butter and lemon, and then you seal it up. And you let it sit. Sometimes people marinate stuff in a steamer or in a slow cooker, a smokehouse. A lot of art to the ribs and the barbecue guys, in Argentina on that beef. Marinating is something that we all... Now let me take it a step further. This relates to the show, why this is what I... Can a thought be marinated? A thought or an idea? Yes, a thought or idea can be marinated, which is a metaphor for letting a or piece of writing and gain depth over time. Similar to cooking, this process involves a unconscious mind to connect new information and refine raw ideas. The process, it involves stepping away from a premature idea, allowing it to sit and develop unconsciously before forcing before forcing a final product. The benefits. This technique reduces pressure, allows for deeper, more complex insight, and helps in shifting focus from immediate, often shallow thoughts to better, more considered. You can marinate an idea. It is probably better in today's society, particularly political issues, to marinate things. So now the Epstein files have been, and on both sides, I'm very sorry. I remember when I first was trying to get sober, years and years ago, in the 90s, I made several attempts. I didn't try that hard sometimes, but I remember I moved into a place and got out of LA, cool apartment right on the spit. It was above a very popular, and so when friends of mine in AA down there, yeah, you don't want to live in that. You're just asking for trouble because the line out the place, all the girls in bathing suits, you're not setting yourself up for success. And I remember going down there one day and I watched, the guy with the Hawaiian shirt sitting at the very end of the bar. People just kept walking in the door. And I'm eating like a cheeseburger and I'm watching, and I know the interaction, rubbing at his nose and doing all the key thing, and then disappeared after 10 minutes, didn't even order a drink. Found the two girls and walked off and went in the girls' room, just all the shit that comes. So I now knew that this guy was the guy. He was the guy. And he was there every day. He'd go home and take a break and come. I ended up drinking in this place. But I saw it, it became obvious. So when we're talking about people that went to Epstein Island, I firmly believe that there are people's names that are mentioned. If some guy comes up to you and he's got the biggest apartment in New York, he owns multiple, he can name drop or show up when you met him with Chris Tucker and President Clinton, and he's got, Kevin Spacey, and he's with all these people, and you recognize them, they're in your industry, or even if you don't recognize them, you're a high profile, and they say, hey man, we're having this big gathering of great minds on the island. And he sends his plane and tells you can stay in one of his villas. And blah. There's a lot of people that happened to. They got them there, they knew they were famous, and they were waiting to see. Young women approached him, and you look and you go, that's 21, and just, I don't know, I was never at the island. I was never invited to. But could I see why, if you were famous, someone asked you to come to this lap of luxury with this very impressive resume guy, before you heard anything bad about him? This is, super famous athletes that I went to their golf tournaments. And then that night at 3:00 in the morning, I'm awoken by the sound in the hallway, or my phone rings. So 7:00 in the morning. You only go to that once. And when you walk in and see some of the things that are, because it doesn't reflect the values and moral that you want people to see. And you definitely don't want you don't want to be associated. You don't want other famous people to be able to say, I saw Baldwin, he was at blah, 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 blah. Now again, if you're at an event and something like this happens, you leave. You can't be blamed for flying to these high profile events and then finding out. But if you're on that list that you flew back and forth 4 or 5 times, you knew what was going on. You went back a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th time because you were into what was going on there and you didn't care. When you're on the list, like supposedly President Clinton is, and you were on the island 28 times, and now you're going to stand before Congress and you're going to say, I got to call bullshit on that. I'm going to divorce him now. He promised me he wasn't on that island. Listen, these files and the number of people that knew, you haven't seen anything. You haven't seen anything of how this is going to sprawl and how many people, other various things that have been able to kind of dodge it. Now, I don't know about how much redaction. I know the best possible thing is to take Barack Obama's and just throw and sling enough mud, get enough newspapers and outlets to this crazy shit that they're throwing at Trump. I don't claim to know Donald Trump. I have met him. I have worked with and for him in my family, his TV series, or my mother's breast when Stephen did his. Alec, Billy, and I have, and there's very, very different hatred from one of my brothers too, total disdain and almost hatred. And then my ally with Trump, because I support the president. Do I support everything the president? Do I support everything the president does? Have you supported? Now, for me, it started with JFK. That's in my lifetime. Do I support everything JFK or Johnson or Nixon or Ford or Carter, Reagan or Bush or Clinton or Bush or Obama or Biden or Trump? No, I don't support everything of any of them have done. And I was a Democrat for a long time, and we had Democratic presidents who I was like, and the same thing, there's stuff that happens with Trump that I look and I go, who's advising him? Did he actually post that about the Obamas and somehow it got by him, how insulting that image would be? Or is he doing something that's, or somebody in his administration they just don't want anyone to notice right now? Release an image of the Obamas. They needed such a terrifying distraction from what they're really doing, which I think both sides do. I think that to avoid having press hit about one subject, they do something to advancement in Iran, ships are on the way. We're going to be reporting, we're probably going to start bombing the shit out of Iran tomorrow. So, I mean, we're going to declare war against another country, and it turns out there's a vote for impeachment. I mean, Biden pulled one of these. The submarine, the little man-made submarine that had like 4 or 5 people on it. Do you remember this story? And then we're hearing a knocking. We're hearing a knocking. So naval ships are picking up sounds. It must be them hitting the inside. Those people were dead within hours, and they knew it. And they kept that story in the press for a week, having all of us on the edge of our seat, going to get them in time. Are they going to save them? One was like a billionaire, father, and his kid was with him, and blah, blah. And they just kept building on the story, and they kept telling us how it was all bullshit. They were voting on impeaching Biden that week, sitting on the edge of our seat, wondering if Tommy was going to, whether the Navy was going to. Fucking thing was bullshit. Manufactured on the Hill by the team of people that do these things. Complete fucking nonsense. When Attorney General Bondi released Epstein-related files and what she called was included in that disclosure was a 3-page document that stood out for all the other documents, almost all of which were previously made public. That document, called the Evidence List, is a catalog of materials apparently obtained through searches of Epstein's properties in New York and the U.S. Virgin Islands after his arrest, and a search of his Palm Beach man, more than a dozen. All that's on this document, the mention of a list of evidence. Investigations into Epstein's conduct offers a roadmap to what could be included in the materials that President Donald Trump's administration has so far declined to release, including logs of who potentially visited Epstein's private island and the records of a wiretap of the phone belonging to Jazane, the Epstein associate, who currently is serving a 20 for recruiting and grooming the underage girls who Epstein sexually. According to the evidence list, the remaining materials include 40 computers and electronic devices, 26 storage drives, and more than 70 CDs. Those are videos. Epstein, who was a Mossad agent working for Israel, Epstein and Mossad, constant contact with the CIA, invited influential people, politicians, gazillionaires, Hollywood stars, rock and roll, musical, high profile people. They got them there the first time. And then the true sense of who they were, what type of monsters lived within them that wasn't in the public eye. Why if you could shatter, why if you could destroy Bill Clinton, if you could destroy a huge American, Why would you do that now? Just enough of them to, do you wait? You don't want to drop this bomb. You don't want to drop it right before an election. One of the people running on this, drop it on before anyone even gets, but more than likely, Pelosi, and again, if you have people that high up and you can damage them and you can control, if you walk out and you go into some bed and you have sex with an underage boy and you can show that video, and for a long time, they talked about if Israel wanted, and this has to do with way past like supporting Israel, the whole region. Imagine you have videotape evidence and conversation, photographs of illicit, terrifying. That would be a really great way to get a person in office or already out of office to support your ideas. And I think this is what we've been talking about that is on this, which is why Jeffrey Epstein isn't dead. Jeffrey Epstein isn't dead. Jeffrey Epstein has at least enough copies of what he needs to make sure that an entire party in the United States would not allow anything bad to happen. He's got backup. He's got lawyers, people in other countries, and the equivalent to our CIA in other countries. There are factions of people in ours that don't want me. And listen, if I was Joe Rogan and I was, several million people, I would have already got the warning shot. To tell you the truth, even though I say things that are of the magnitude of a Candace Owen or a Joe Rogan or whatever, maybe even beyond that, because I go on to say, I know for a fact that they didn't kill him. There is some of the shit that they get people to believe that they can actually get over the American people, and the American people don't go, okay. Even with video evidence, even when you watch the explosions happening, when you zoom in and shrink down the building, but even when experts come on and go, that didn't happen, those are explosions. Those were planted in the elevator shafts. Even when they show you the planes. You know what the sad thing about all this is? Honestly, the sad thing that I think about, because I'm way beyond the conspiracy theory, the thermite that was found all over that causes those. So the planes took off. They did actually take manufactured calls. Hey, listen, be careful. The hole in the Pentagon, a piece of debris from an air, they disintegrated into dust. There isn't one seat. The part that really gets to me, did they relocate, drop them all off in Antarctica, kill all of them? Divert their planes and crash them into the ocean, or no one's found them and they're on the side of. If they didn't crash into the train, if it wasn't a plane that came back towards Dulles, where's all those people? Kill a whole bunch of our own. They went that far. They dropped the buildings and the firemen, and that blows me away. And do I think about what I say when I look right into the camera and I think that, is that gonna come back? Don't we live in a country where we can say, yeah, that doesn't look right, or JFK's head moved in a certain way, and people heard gunshots, and there's a lot of evidence that's everything that's going on with him, and all these guys are doing signals. All these guys it looks like a very coordinated. They dive over the table after he's shot. They collect his body. They take all the camera equipment. They're seen handing each other things while he's laying there bleeding. They take him. Now there's stuff from inside the OR and the emergency room from doctors that were there, but I haven't seen one person. The big one that I want to know, just no one's even talking. In jail in Utah. Such a fucking joke. It's so ridiculous. It's worse than Oswald. Oswald had the pedigree, affiliation with Russia. They groomed him for a long time, and they set this up for a long time, knowing they were going to kill him. For a long time. Lyndon Johnson and he was involved. And I just could go on and on. We accept some things that we know defy gravity, defy physics. Pristine condition. Hit Connolly's wrist, made a left-hand turn, stopped, came back, went crazy stuff that could not have happened. We know that couldn't have. The Warren Commission told America that's what happened, man. That's what happened, case closed. There are people that have done, and this is one of those rare opportunities, unlike 9/11. You don't think in the Epstein files there's stuff about 9/11? You don't think that there's proof, people that were involved in 9/11? There's mentions, and it'd be really easy to. Now, what would America do with all the conspiracy theories if Epstein in there somehow, a former president or a big figure is on Epstein's island having sex with some 14-year-old girl, conversations are going on with Epstein that they didn't realize they weren't seeing. They were taping them and filming them. There are things potentially in the Epstein that could change the direction of the next 10 elections and how they choose to and what they decide to do with it. Are we really looking at a situation where a former American president, I'm sad to say, could their reputation be? Monica Lewinsky was giving oral sex to Bill Clinton in the White House with a kid, later to become the Attorney General. He was having sex with this young intern who thought best to take his ejaculant and shoot it on her. She then took the sweater from leaving and folded it up and sealed it in a plastic bag. We might need that. I did not have sex with that woman. I did not. Now, DNA evidence. How are you going to explain? Again, and this went right by. This guy shows up and his foundation, hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the earlier question from this couple from Idaho about whether it's safe to send our kids, and you want to know why? This guy wasn't kicked out of office for doing it. And I've met Bill Clinton. I supported Bill Clinton. I voted for Bill. There's stuff going to. Now, I'm not sure who they're going to make the sacrificial, but I think Bill and Hillary are. I'm not sure what the list contains for. You're going to see some big names, some big actor. Now, are we going to see the videotape? Are they going to use this videotape to try to, behind closed doors, shape American politics without having to do other people? They might. They might get together with a room with a bunch of lawyers and Trump-type people and J.D. Vance's, and they might say, Kamala's acceptable. This guy can't run. Newsom's. And I'm not saying I know Gavin Newsom went. They might use the leverage to reshape what's going to happen. I think that allowing that information to come out closer to election time, if you let that come out now, all that stuff, and in today's society, people will be watching reels and there'll be episodes of The Simpsons that will make fun of it, and we'll have moved on way after this. The attention span of the average American voter that's under 50 years, is about 8 seconds. They're watching reels, man. Their mind and they're glued to something that happened 3 years ago. I mean, I can tell you and prove to you just by following the money and the number of auto pens and the number of stuff that Joe Biden wasn't running this country since probably day one, but certainly after a year. And they jack him up and give him enough rest and have him appear now, and they send things out about, don't you miss this president? 16 people are chasing him. It's all Hollywood produced with people that are on the payroll with the exact intention to sabotage the current administration and to not allow it to be cleaned up, because the racket, the money that they've been making, the things that they have, and you forget about Elon Musk, he stepped down. How much are they talking about Musk now? How much about USAID are they talking about that? Are they talking about the stuff that he uncovered? Are we investigating the people that he said, no, hang on a second. This company made $600 million and they did nothing that they said. There was talk, and I'm not there. I'm not sitting here. I'm not quoting. There was a foundation set up by Chelsea Clinton, and she was supposed to be, digging wells or feeding, people in Africa or whatever it was. And they found the bill for her home on this payroll, on the expenditures, and they found the cost of her wedding. And so far, according to the homework that's been done and proven, it was 80 something, I'm making this number, plus $1 million and earmarked for her organization, and less than a couple million of it. We don't know where the 11 million for her wedding, we don't know where, or maybe it was 11 million for the 5 million, whatever it was, but it's some astronomical amount. Again, is that true? Is that hard to find out if it's true? While one side says, no, that didn't happen, the other side, yeah, absolutely it does. Can't we have a forensic examination and make her and her family pay that money back? They have the money. The Clintons are worth a huge amount of money. And so you look at some of these people, you look at the success of their books, you look at the success of their speaking, you look at, and then you realize, well, they didn't make that money. The Obamas got out of office and they went from, they entered as a net worth, and they left office and they were worth, I could say they were worth 9, Now they're worth over 100. Are his books and his personal stuff, and Michelle has made so many great investments, but something sounds strange. Something sounds strange when you look at Nancy Pelosi and all the money they've made for a congresswoman that's, 200, and she's worth $90 million. So where did that come from? The husband didn't make that many great investments. You can't substantiate how they made this. You having to take a look at her and what she knew. And are you hearing? If I go on set, we're shooting at, this happened to me now. We're shooting at so-and-so. He likes movies. Can your kid be in the movie? Can his kid be in the movie? Will Daniel do you mind doing a shout out? I mean, it depends on how important this guy is to the movie. Yeah, man, send him over. Frank, what's going on? How you been? What are you working on? Oh, really? That's a great, I would do this, I would do that, and you give the advice. And in that conversation, Frank's father, who's the CEO of, Northrop, comes up to you and goes, hey, we have a new plane coming out, P9. And even an idiot actor like myself steps in and finds out about a medical device, listens to Jim Rickards tell us breakthroughs. I want to make it legally. If I have the power to, a congressman, and I have the power to vote on an issue that a company stock, the California Cleanup Act, and there's an ocean, full of waste, and we're going to clean it all up along the beach. And this machine picks it up and dredges it. And that company is a new company, a startup, ecological, that the state of California is now a firefighting. And this hose sprays wafer and can fill a helicopter in flight, whatever the fuck it is. If I'm voting on whether or not that gets, and I have a say-so in an earthquake detection device, we're going to sell to the gas company and make it required to be. Should I be allowed to invest in that company? Should I have the power to see to it that stock blows up? I had a friend who had this. It was a steel ball. It broke the glass. If the ball broke the glass, dropped in and blocked. If that comes to my desk and we want the government to, should I be able to get on the ground floor or receive stock from the company? And it's going to say, and so you go in with 400 grand and you buy on whatever, again, I'm making it up. And now that stock, because that every home has to be retrofitted, and every home and hospital and everybody that has gas from now on has to put, and the stock goes to, well, now you have 400,000, and you knew ahead of time. And your vote made the difference as to whether this stock, or you give the information out to a family member, or if that shit can be proven took place, you bet your ass you hang them high and you penalize them, and you take, why wasn't everyone in America before they made the stock worth 10,000? Be ready to marinate. Be ready to take in this information. Don't yell and scream, this person has to go, this person should be killed, this person. Trump's name has been mentioned in these five. I read a report. It was so fucking hysterical. Trump's name is all, it was some politician that put, Eric Sewell, one of these idiots from, Trump's name is all over this report, and he is mentioned over X amount. Listen, of course, he's from New York. He knew Epstein, and he's the one, there's documentation that Donald Trump contacted in like 2006, 7 or 8, somewhere around there, contacted the authorities in New York and said, this guy's a bad guy, he's doing weird shit with young girls, and I want you need to look at this guy. And they have the record of it. The police have acknowledged the fact that this is his good friend. This is a guy where, Trump supposedly, but if Trump said that he never went to that island, he never went to that island. He never went to the island. Why would he set himself up to have anyone that could say he never went to the island? This trying to paint this guy to be a pedophile and all the crap that Bondi was screwing him when she was a kid and like all this crazy shit. The guy that I know never drank, no tattoos, pretty straight-laced. Do I agree with everything he does? Do I agree with some of the things that have racist tones to them? Some of the stuff, again, even if it wasn't him, this last thing that happened with the Obamas really pissed me, because I thought to myself, why? Why would you, even if you didn't do it, and I'm sure he's not stupid enough. And I see a lot of other things that he's for African American, back in the day where people, even Jesse Jackson, who talked about, but again, this isn't going to stop. This isn't going to stop. I'll never forget, I'm going to leave you on this note. I'll never forget watching Barack Obama. All you got to do is throw enough mud at it. All you got to do is raise enough. All you got to do is sling enough shit at somebody. And then people start talking about it, and you post it, and you get it in the right papers and you get it on the news and the conversation starts and it steamrolls and you keep that up and you can distract people. If you're yelling fire, 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 you're going to look. You don't want to burn up in a building. It could cause a clog up at the emergency exit. But if you yell fire, fire, fire enough times and you're not prosecuted or something happens to you and all you get for that is thrown out of the theater, you're in the next theater. That boy who cried wolf thing, we don't penalize people. And that's what this is. Obama was right. There's entire agencies that send out this information that smart people that I know, really smart people who just buy into their CNN, MSNBC people, they're Democrats, and they buy this story that this guy's ruining our country and there won't be anything left. And, I hear other actors, guys like De Niro, and his bilious hatred towards Trump. And I think, why do you hate him so much? Is he hurting your friends? Because, and he's this pedo and that's not the guy I know at all. He's a pretty stand-up guy. Has he done any questionable things that I don't agree with? Yes, he has. But like I said, I don't think Biden could spell his fucking name, drooling down his chin. And then look what they did. Look at the debate that ended him. And the answer was Kamala Harris. And please, God, if you're listening to me right now, and I don't want to do it, but if you're listening to me, please let Kamala Harris and let AOC be. Please. I would enjoy seeing her take another crack. Anyway, let it marinate. Let it marinate. Take the information in, check it when you say, that sounds weird. And then let it go a week or two and let's see what people develop. And then they'll debunk it or this person saw him. Notice how we don't hear from many of the victims. Everyone I've heard of said, a lot of people say there's all kinds of reports that Barack Obama was there, but he vehemently denies. And I keep getting this, look whose name is not on this list. Look whose name is, we're going to find out a lot more about it now that we have these files. But I ask you, no matter who, if they claim the Obamas did something, if they claim Biden, if they claim Clinton, if they claim Trump, if they claim Bush, but let it marinate for a little. Because once that story breaks out, we're going to find out more and more people are going to try to prove it or disprove it. And then you're going to be able to take a look at it, like it said about marinating. And you step away from it and you watch the process. Well, that sounds kind of shady. No, there's 5 witnesses that claim they were in the room with him. But more importantly, it's a very important part of the show. And I'll go into prayer. And when the time is right, they will weaponize that. And guess what? I don't care. If there's in an apartment that proves that any prominent Republicans or any prominent Democrat, it doesn't matter to me. Let them all get it. I want to slaughter every single Obama, whoever it is, famous actors that I know, hang them high. There's a great scene in Dog Day Afternoon. Pacino's in the bank and take their lives and for the misery that it doesn't matter what office. Now, will that happen? But if they release those tapes, what will your reaction be? We have to marinate that. Right now we're going by everyone's word. The video evidence. People are cutting deals and promising certain things. And remember, if you release the video evidence, you get the same thing as making a deal with someone. You're going down. If this person agrees to step out of politics, it's the same thing that Epstein did anyway. It's the same reason why he videotaped whoever has those to have their way. Congressmen, governors, rock and roll stars, a lot, Hollywood. Videotape evidence, and it'll be worse. It'll be worse than just not worse. There'll be drugs, and there'll be. Can you imagine Joey A-list? Hollywood legend. I mean, they must have so much stuff with that many. Let me read that. According to the evidence list, the remaining materials include 40 computers. I don't know what the memory drive can memorize a lot of shit. Movies and all of the footage shot of movies that I've directed. So if the movie is 2 hours long, I've got 10 hours on that one movie, and I have several movies. You only need 30 seconds in a compromising position. Imagine the full-on video and these young boys. 40 computers and electronic devices, 26 storage drives. How big are the storage? You can take a computer and put your stuff from a computer onto a storage drive and keep putting it on a computer. If the storage drive is of any decent size, it could be all 40 computers on it. So, how many How many things are on these storage drives? 70 CDs. Well, a CD can have an entire multiple movies on a CD. I mean, I don't know but we're talking about thousands of hours. I mean, this is an incredible amount of stuff, all sitting there, sweating their asses off. What is my wife gonna do? All the times that I told my kids I got to go see this Jeffrey Epstein guy. Clinton's going to be there, and the company needs to know. And you may be one of the guys that went there the first time, but you went back 3 more. Pimply, hairy ass. And your legacy and your company will fire you immediately and denounce you and separate and distance themselves. And you will lose everything you had. Super well-known people. Now, there's a lot of people, like I said, that might have gone, and they're not going to be in any compromises, because once they figured out what they left, and they didn't go back. But for the ones that did participate, I'm glad they have video. I'm glad that they're going to, against their will, being forced to have. Lord God, thank you for your guidance. We believe that but Lord, I have to tell you that there's in this show, we talked about young women and some young boys who were brutally attacked and used as. And so my first prayer, in some way and they can forgive the people, that the right people get their hands on these materials, and that the information comes to the people around the world exactly through Epstein. Let's make the legacy of who they really were. And I mean that. I don't care how big I don't care any of it. I want people to go back, and just like they've come knocked on the door a couple, but I was right. See, what makes them scared is I was right. I said in the very, very beginning, and they will never allow this guy to run against them. And they know that Trump is going to successfully beat Biden. Now, I said that 18 months before the famous debate. That I said, when that happened, I go, they're making this, they've announced Kamala Harris, and there's 7 key swing states where she's not going to win one of those. This isn't going to be close. This story that they're trying to give you on the left about one of the tightest elections, he's going to win all 7 of those states. Arizona, Nevada, he's going to win all those. Not even going to be close. He's going to win all those states. He's going to destroy her in electoral college. It's not going to be within 10 or within a state or 2. In 4 districts of Kamala Harris that only cared. And I was told what a fucking moron I was. Yeah, you don't know, and what happened to you, and why don't you call your brother Alec and your brother Billy? What happened to your brother Stephen? I thought he was with you with Trump, and he's vanished now, and blah, 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 blah. Jim Rickards, look up Jim Rickards. He and we saw eye to eye that I ever saw. And I was right every fucking time. So when I tell you certain things, I'm not guessing. I can't always say so-and-so told me, or I checked with such and such, and I have access to in this government or in this country, who, believe me, the shit that they know, other people I know from other countries, more than some of the military and some of the people that I know here, when they tell me, they know. Their own Secret Service and their own people that are being approached to make deals, to jump out of the ship that they have with Biden. There's going to be so many things, and it'll be slowly trickles out. The big bombs won't. It's going to redefine. This guy's changing stuff. And listen, there's a possibility that they try to kill him again. I mean, they've tried twice. There's a possibility that they try to kill him. There's a possibility that when these names come out and the truth comes out, how certain people knew things that they knew, and the emails and the text messages come out. She told me to do it. He told me to do it. Don't be surprised if, like, one of these guys, don't be surprised if there's some violent thing that occurs in New York. When people in New York are going to get sick of this guy. Watch. This is not going to bode well. He's going to tell you he's going to do this, and none of it's going to go by anybody. Now he's already going to up the taxes, which will affect the lower income guys who can't afford another dollar in tax, another 10 grand a year, another 50 grand a year, another 10 grand a year for an owner in New York, in the Bronx, and in Staten Island or whatever, that kind of stuff. Another 10 grand could crush them. They won't have $1,000, $12,000. They won't be able to do another 1,000. They're going, check to check, and they're getting it done, but it's tight right now. You're going to wiggle all those people and force them out. And that's a lot of people. There's a lot of people that are in that category. Maybe not so much in Manhattan, where you concentrate on, the properties are millions and millions and millions of dollars. In Brooklyn, in the Bronx, and Staten Island, and Queens, and there's places where people don't have that kind of money. They don't have a lot of wiggle room to add more to their plate. So, and this guy promised he wasn't going to do that. Swore up and down. While I sat here and told you, this is a terrible mistake. He's full of shit. I think there's a bit of an agenda from people that are from where he's from to try to gain footholds of power. And now he's a powerful guy in New York City, arguably the most. And this guy's the mayor. He scammed everybody. There's a lot of times not enough people listen. Let me just ask you a quick favor too. You would get the word. You would know more about what I know. If you could subscribe, tell somebody, hey man, have you heard Baldwin? He's got a lot of shit. That's pretty true. He seems to nail a lot of stuff on the head about what's going to happen. Watch, marinate. Take the information and marinate it. Go through it. Step back, look at the evidence and say, does that make any sense? Because a lot of it you can decipher and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would he do that? And then you say, oh, there's reports that he was here, here, and here. None of the witnesses said he was ever on the island. What does that mean? That means that you're getting bullshitted by people who know how to word it, who know how to say it, who know how to twist it. And they're trying to cast doubt on someone because he's about to cut their fucking... What are you going to do? Midterms are coming. Another election will come after this one. And you don't want this guy to be telling the truth to you. Barack Obama, throw enough shit at it. Throw enough mud at it. Cast enough doubt in it. Cast enough doubt in the person. And the trust erodes. I heard, and this guy, I got people that vehemently, you fucking asshole, you don't know about blah, 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 blah. And I go, well, no, actually I do. And just because they say it on CNN doesn't mean I believe it. Or if they say it on Fox, look into it more. I fact check it. And some of the fact checking that you do is paid for and set up. That information chain is set up. I remember, I'm going to close on this. I remember that you could ask AI, why should I vote for Donald Trump? You shouldn't vote for Donald Trump. Represents. Why should I vote for Kamala Harris? Ran something, this, that, and blah, blah, blah. And she was, the Attorney General in California, and she went to this college and you would think was a neutral site, turned around and buried. Trump had already been president once. It was an unbelievable example of how the information and the access is controlled by other people that have an agenda. I just want the facts. And that's what I try to give you. Have a blessed day, and I'll talk to you next show.